Welcome back to another Contingency Contract Operation Spectrum video. Today this will be an extensive guide to the permanent map that is going to be out during Spectrum. As you know, we got the announcement on Twitter that Arknights Contingency Contract Operation Spectrum is coming out in the middle of November in EN. So we have a lot of preparation to do. In this video, I'll be going over an extensive guide for the permanent map because I got a comment about it and I really want to help you guys out. So I'll be doing this along with a daily map guide. The daily map guide is going to be a lot harder to do since there's a lot of daily maps to go over while there's only one permanent map. So let's get into it. So before we talk about the enemies and what operators we need to use, I think it would be best if I show you guys the map. Now, it's kind of hard to see the map like this, so here's a more better view of the map right here, but I will be using this website to help deal with what enemies you're gonna have to be dealing with, and especially the main threats. And for the main threats, I'll be going over certain operators that you should build and which skill you should prioritize on, because if you want to get used to Contingency Contract, you gotta think of operators and strategies that will be good for that certain enemy, because certain enemies will have certain resistance, certain attack boosts, certain defense. There are a lot of math. I'll just say that. But yeah, let's get into it. So, before I start, I know a lot of people are going to be very wary about what tags they're going to bring. So there are a couple of tags that actually ban certain classes, but for me, I will be banning specifically defenders and casters. So we'll not be listing any defenders or casters because guards and medics are going to be very useful in this Contingency Contract due to a lot of factors. But yeah, let's get started. The first threat I actually want to get into is actually not a huge threat, but it does have its own independent contract with this Contingency Contract, and that is the Pincer Beast. And if we go on the website right here, it has an independent tag where it increases their defense and resistance. And this may not sound big, but there's a lot of Pincer Beasts that come out on. There's a lot of Pincer Beasts that come out on this lane, and they all have the same exact pattern. Some of them come in waves, some of them come one by one, but there's a lot of them. I'll just say that. So there's a lot of different ways to take care of them, and I'll go over that by using a ship. So there are a couple of operators that come in mind. I think the most simplest one goes to Calcit. Now, I think that most people prioritize Skill 3, and Skill 3 works just fine. However, Skill 2 I think is a little bit more better for this Contingency Contract. However, if you want to use Calcit for more than one thing, definitely prioritize Skill 3. That true damage is very good, and Monster is very strong, especially for the stun. But I think for this role specifically, you can use either Skill 2 or Skill 3. Both work out just fine. Another one that's very simple to use is Schwartz on Skill 2. Schwartz on Skill 2 increases her attack stat while also having an increased chance to activate her talent, which her talent, if you watch right here, it decreases the target's defense and also increases her own attack for a couple seconds. Now this is RNG based, so you might have to either level this up with masteries or just roll with the RNG, since there's an enemy that prioritizes the operator with the highest attack, and sometimes you don't want your Schwartz to have that. Skill 3 is a little bit niche because it is the straight line range, and there's no real placement for Schwartz to have in Skill 3, so Skill 2 is a lot better. My personal opinion, the best one to take if you don't have Calcit or Schwartz is Weedy on Skill 2. The only downside to Weedy Skill 2 is that I'm pretty sure you're going to have this at M3 just because of the increased push force. However, that being said though, also you do have to wait a total of 70 seconds to actually get the skill up, and sometimes that might be a little bit too much. But you can always deploy the water cannon, which will increase which will increase the SP charge for a couple seconds. And once it's done, you don't have to worry about the lane. And yeah, I think that's the best way to take care of the Pincer Beast. The Pincer Beasts are not a big threat, but they still will be something to worry about just because there's so many of them and they come in waves again, while you're prioritizing other things as well, which we'll cover in a bit. So let's move on to the next threat and what operators to use in this threat. I think this next one is going to be one that definitely a lot of you are going to be worried about, and it is the nightclubs. And as you know, the nightclubs have their own specific risk tag, and it's very, very crucial. Very crucial. And there's a couple of them, but there's one that comes out like on here, and then there's another one that comes out on the left side as well. I'm pretty sure there's another one as well, but I'm not too sure. I'll correct myself in a pinned comment down below. But these guys have 2 lives technically. They have a effect where they reduce the attack of the highest attack operator, and yeah, and then again their risk tag over here it makes them even stronger. So what are some operators that are good for taking care of them? Well, I think there's no other option than to use a strong guard or a strong supporter. And those options being limited, I think Surtur is definitely one of them, because Surtur skill 3 makes it so that she's pretty much like dealing so much arch damage, and they don't have too high of arch damage. While at the same time, even if Surtur gets low in HP, she still can stand for another 8 seconds, which is incredible. And those 8 seconds can mean the difference between death and surviving the stage. Another option that I've seen is Silver Ash in skill 3. The only thing is that you have to have him down beforehand before you start slashing, because if you deploy him and let's say the nightclub's coming in, he still has to charge it. He still has to charge like 15 seconds, and the attack stat for them are very, very high, which means that you're gonna have to be really, really focused on it. Some debuffing is very much necessary. So, two operators I would suggest is Suzerain. I don't know if you need Suzerain at Mastery 3, but it would be nice to have at Mastery 3 because of the talent because of her talent increase, and also her slow. The slow is very important because you don't want those nice clubs to be hitting your operators. So, and then another operator, I think it's pretty much the exact same as Angelina. She doesn't do debuff, but she does slow very well, and she does decent damage to them as well. And I think that's honestly really good. At the same time, you want to have 2 different operators for this role, because there's going to be one on the left side and one on the right side. So I suggest, if you want to, make sure to have one guard. Just make sure to have like your main defending guard or whoever you're using here, and then have a backup guard or sniper if you want to use snipers. If you want to use snipers, then go ahead. I think Exu Ash is pretty good, specifically Ash on skill 2, and definitely Exu on skill 3. However, this might not be enough, so I suggest bringing probably a Warfern buff on skill 2, because that way you'll be able to do a lot more damage. Also, if you're a Contingency Contract player, you probably already have them built, but if you don't already, I suggest building Elysium if you're going to be using snipers as well, because he does have sniper synergy. And this also decreases their defense, which is incredible, also removing stealth, which we'll talk about in a bit. And yeah, I think there are a lot of ways to take care of the nightclubs, but they're still very powerful because they do have 2 lives, and it's a lot. Okay, that is one of the other main threats out of the way. Let's get into the next main threat. Here we go. The Corrupted Knight, aka part 1 of 2 bosses in this stage. This is the Corrupted Knight. He is the melee attacker who does massive amounts of massive amounts of physical damage. That's the other one I'm going to talk about. And he spawns on the left side here and has this long pathing here. This may seem like anticlimactic because he does have to go by your defense tile operator, but this dude, he has a charged up attack that takes some time before he uses it, but when it hits, it does an AoE, and it can pretty much kill anything in a 3x3 radius, if not. Yeah. And so this thing has a lot of things going for him, and also, again, he has his own tags along with the next other boss that I will talk about after him. But yeah, the Kryptonite is super strong, and no matter which one you choose, if you want to increase the HP, attack, and then give them stealth, or you want to increase their attack speed when they're in range a lot more, or you just want to give them the simple buff of just some attack buff. Just some stat buffs. But I think honestly the Kryptonite is probably the more easier one to manage, since he only prioritizes one enemy, while prioritizes one operator, while the other boss can prioritize up to 2, but we'll talk about that afterwards. So, who do I think you should bring for this one? Well, again, it depends on what operators you're going to bring to the table. So, if you want to, again, snipers are a great choice. Exu on skill 3 works perfectly. Make sure to bring a Warframe buff. Make sure to bring Shamare if you want to for the Crystal effect to decrease the defense even further. Elysium will also get rid of the stealth, so if you want to do that as well. If you don't have an Exu but you do have somehow Ash, definitely build Ash for skill 2. That works out really well. If you need to though, if snipers aren't your thing, definitely go for a Surtur. Surtur will tank all the hits from the Kryptonite and then even stay alive for another 8 seconds. And I've seen commonly using Ak buff or Scotty alter or Warframe buff, etc. Just make sure you have some sort of buff for when you do use Surtur, and also have some bait down, because Surtur alone is not going to be able to take care of the Kryptonite. So make sure you have some bait units like some Vanguards, maybe fast redeploy if you need to, or it's anything that can help support Surtur and do more arch damage. I wouldn't suggest any other guard operators, just because most guard operators will just be very vulnerable to the Kryptonite's attack. Spectre would work, but Spectre is kind of niche, just because she won't do as much attack as Surtur, since she usually is more known for prioritizing 3 targets at once rather than 1 large target. But if you want to, Spectre's an option. Alright, let's move on to the final threat, and it is the Withered Knight. The Withered Knight is, in my opinion, probably the biggest threat in this stage, along with the nightclubs. Once again, the Withered Knight has the same exact risk contracts as so is the Kryptonite. So no matter which tags you take for either or, they're going to be the same in the end. Once again, they'll get in stealth as well, or the Withered Knight will appear with the Kryptonite at the same time. Because normally what happens is that the Kryptonite comes out, and then once the last couple enemies come on the right side, the last one to spawn will be the Withered Knight. This will make it so that the Kryptonite and the Withered Knight will come out at the exact same time, meaning that you still have to deal with a couple of enemies at the end, such as Pincer Beast. This is honestly a very hard one to get used to, just because he does arch damage and he prioritizes 2 operators at once with his arrows. Also, he has a special arrow where it locks onto it for a couple seconds and then does an AoE attack, and it hurts. I will tell you that. I haven't been going over many medics, but this is definitely the guy you want to get medics for. Nightingale. MVP for this one, because she gives resistance buffs, she can give you arch evasions, which can honestly be super clutch. It is a little bit RNG in the mix, but honestly, it's very good for it. And anything in range of that, in that Sanctuary for skill 3, just so good, so good. Now as for damage wise, it's going to be very difficult, because this guy has a decent amount of res, but also really good defense. So depending on what you have left on the table, I've seen Silver Ash, Surtur, I can't really name a lot of operators, but I rarely see snipers. The only snipers I could see working from what I saw is Rosemontis. Rosemontis in skill 3, because she puts on she puts on 2 pillars, which the Kryptonite will prioritize. which is why I mentioned Nightingale, because Nightingale can place on bird cages, which will be prioritized by the Withered Knight. And yeah, I don't know really much else to say, because I think the Withered Knight is just really hard to deal with. You definitely need some debuffs, so definitely bring Suzerain or Shamar for the debuffing as well. But for lane blockers, definitely bring a strong guard, like Blaze. Yeah, definitely bring a strong guard to protect that lane, such as Blaze on skill 2, who you probably will have from the beginning of the map. Another option is Mountain on skill 2, because he can heal himself. He has decreased defense, but that's not going to matter to the Withered Knight, as he does arch damage, and Mountain doesn't have any resistance, so it's not going to matter. And yeah, it would be good to place a defender there, but I personally will be banning defenders, so don't expect anything from me. Definitely, if you need to have a fast redeploy, definitely do that, because a fast redeploy is very useful for the Withered Knight. But there are some strats where your team setup or team comp will no longer have space for fast redeploys, so keep that in mind, okay? However, fast redeploy is definitely worth it, especially for the Withered Knight. And yeah. So if you put 2 and 2 together, you're going to be having Pincer Beast on the right side, along with Nightclub that has the same pathing as Withered Knight, Corrupted Knight on the left side, along with the Nightclub as well. There's going to be casters on the left side too, which is not too much of a threat, but it will be something to consider. And yeah, there's going to be some defenders as well on the left side, but most of the time you'll be having arch damage on that left side anyway. And no matter which side you ban the tiles on, it should be okay. I suggest banning the right side tiles instead of left side tiles, because on the right side you're not losing too much. Yes, you do lose the HP tile, but you're not really using the HP tile. You could just bring a medic as well to help you out there. And for the left side, you lose that defense tile, which is pretty big, to be honest, because those defenders do hurt. And yeah, I think that is a really good pinch point as well, since most enemies will be taking this route, which passes through the defense tile. So if you have that open, this is probably your last pinch point that you can use. For the Pincer Beasts, again, they all have the same pathing, and you can do whatever you need to. And then most of the rest of the pathings on the right side have this straight line all the way to the right of the base. So just know that whichever operators you do bring to the table, make sure they fulfill a certain role. Make sure they are able to be used if they are a unit that is kind of hard to just keep on the field. Make sure they're able to be used once again. If you are banning a certain class of operators, make sure you have your own set of operators ready for those certain roles. Let's say you're banning guards and medics and you want to be using defenders and casters, make sure you have certain alternatives that I didn't mention. Alright, I think that's a good extensive guide into the CC Spectrum permanent map. I will be going over daily maps, which is going to be a much longer video because there are 8 daily maps that I have to go over. And yeah, it's going to be a lot of work. Actually, maybe 7. I can't count. Okay, I talked a lot. I said a lot of information. I said a lot of different operators that are very good for this contingency contract. And I hope that convinces you on which operators to mastery, which operators to build, which operators to use for friend support if you don't have to already, and what kind of risk you want to bring. Because I did already do a risk explanation video, but I think this in-depth guide will help you decide on how you want to tackle the boss, nightclubs, along with the Pincer Beast. Because since those are the 4 main threats in this stage, I will definitely be doing a lot more on CC Spectrum, since CC Spectrum is coming closer and closer to global. I have a lot less time to give you preparation and goals videos on. If you want to stay tuned for more like this, make sure you hit the like button, letting me know that this guide was helpful for you. Comment down below what daily map is going to be the most stressful for you so I can prioritize that one instead. Subscribe and hit the notification bell if you want to stay tuned for upcoming videos, or you want to see me go live when CC Spectrum comes out, because I do want to give you guys some special insight if I do go live, or make a special video for CC Spectrum. Alright, that's going to be it for this video. I hope you all enjoyed it, and yeah, I'll catch you all in the next one.